Hi guys, you're very welcome to our second King Lear live masterclass with ExamRevision.ie. It's me, Daniel, once again, and yeah, you're all very welcome. I hope you've had a nice midterm. I know you haven't got to do much, and the weather today isn't that great, but hopefully you'll get something out of today. Alright then, so following on from the last live session, hopefully you attended it or got to take a look at it. We were looking at characters in the last one. Today we're going to be looking at the key themes from the play King Lear. Okay, we're going to have a discussion around them. We're going to have then, as always, a couple of pointers, a couple of tips for to consider in response to the single text essay. And this time we're going to do question and answers, probably the most valuable part, probably the thing you're here for. So if you go to our Instagram story, I have our Instagram account open here on my phone as well, so I'll keep an eye on it. Do feel free to throw in any kind of Leaving Cert English question. Actually, not even just King Lear. Ideally King Lear, but if you have any kind of burning question related to any topic in English, whether it's comparative, poetry, do feel free to throw it into our Insta story, and I will respond to you either as I'm going through. If I read some that I think are kind of related to King Lear, I'll answer them over the live stream, hopefully. But other than that, I will respond to you with a reply as well, a written reply. Okay then. So, just to remind ourselves, the exam focus, the single text, I started with this slide last time as well. I think it is important to start with it again, particularly now that we have the announcement that Leaving Cert 2021 will in fact go ahead. And for most people, I think if you're doing home ec, maybe not, but for most people, English, the second paper, English paper 2, will be your exam on the Thursday afternoon, so it's early enough, but at least you have some clarity now. So the single text question, for again, if you're in this live session, it's going to be King Lear, hopefully. It's the first section of paper 2. It's worth 60 marks in total. There's going to be 2 different questions you answer on one. Out on the paper, whatever it might be, whatever's in your head, that's not really good enough. So is it considered? Is it thought out? Is it developed in the right way? Language then. So is your expression clear? Are you communicating clearly? Are you using kind of the target language? So for example, in a Shakespeare essay, are you using words like soliloquy? Are you using words like tragic flaw, tragic hero, protagonist, antagonist? If it's a poetry response, prescribed poetry, are you using words like alliteration, personification, onomatopoeia, whatever it may be? Each section of the course has that kind of target language. So are you using that? Are you using the key terms? And again, is your vocabulary developed? Is it sophisticated? And again, sophisticated vocabulary doesn't mean using 10 different kind of posh words. It just means having that kind of control and that confidence in using language. And then your mechanics, your 6 marks, your spelling, grammar, punctuation, kind of all the itty bitty bits. Again, if you have a waiver, you don't need to worry about mechanics. Your distribution of marks is a little bit different, okay? But other than that, PCLM, vitally important. Okie dokie then. So, again, not to insult anyone's intelligence, I'm sure you all know this. And again, just a word again, I am not the font of all knowledge when it comes to Shakespeare or when it comes to the teaching of English. This is just things that I've found from marking the state exams for the last couple of years, and again from being a teacher of senior English for the last couple of years as well. At higher level, it's what I find. What sets you apart? This is what this live session, like the last one, is hopefully going to try and do, okay? It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about how can I take what I've learned and look at it a slightly different way to stand out from the crowd? Okay, how can I entice the examiner into giving me that little bit of a pep talk, giving me that little bit of kind of development? Okay, so a theme is a recurring issue or idea conveyed throughout the plot. All right, it gives us as readers a richer and deeper insight and understanding into the world of the text. Themes can be a vehicle for Shakespeare's view of the world, his thoughts, and then his social commentary behind the text. So again, when I say social commentary, what I basically mean there is, what does Shakespeare has written this text, okay? What does he make of the world, okay? What is he trying to say beyond what's happening to the characters, beyond the plot? So scratching beneath the surface, going a little beyond the plot. So that's basically what themes do. Themes are a vehicle to look at things in a deeper and in a richer way. Okay, and again, ExamRevision.ie, if you go to our website, which I'll talk about later on in the live stream, you'll see that in our revision pack on King Lear, I have a diagram and I describe social commentary, what it actually means that little bit more. Okay, but basically, look, if you learn one thing today, if you take one thing away from the live session, when you are looking at themes, ask yourself this always, okay? So the last bullet point there, what is being conveyed to me here? Okay, what is being conveyed to you as a reader, as an audience member? All right. So, again, like I said, you've all, hopefully or ideally, you have all studied themes to do with King Lear. And in getting kind of the thematic study going, I'm taking this umbrella approach. Okay, so when I take the umbrella approach, what I mean by that is, imagine the top of the umbrella is kind of the major. That I'm going to talk about 3 themes today, but okay, so there's just a problem with the slideshow there, I think. So 2 seconds, guys. I think there might be a delay in the live screen. Okay, so I'm talking about thematic study there. And yeah, so we're taking the umbrella approach, 3 major themes, and we're going to look at it in 3 different ways. So you have, for the first one, we're going to look at the theme of madness, and under the theme of madness, we're going to be looking at 3 different parts of it, okay? So we're starting with the disrupted state. So remember, sorry for the delay there. I think there's just the internet with the bad weather is a little bit off. But anyway, we're back on track, okay? So the first theme we're going to look at is the theme of madness. And under the theme of madness, basically each one of these slides now is going to have, you know that idea when your teacher tells you when you have a single text essay or any kind of essay, what's your point? What's your discussion point, okay? So hopefully each one of these slides is going to be a discussion point that you could possibly raise, okay? Or at least it's going to be a consideration that you can make, all right? And like I said, it's about being that little bit more, not even smarter or cleverer, just being a little bit more strategic nearly, okay? So yeah, you're talking about the theme of madness, but in what ways can you look at that theme? Because everyone is going to be saying, again, if you have an examiner, 200 scripts, all right, if you have an examiner 200 scripts, it's going to be looking at how can you actually be different, okay? So Lear as king is suffering a mental madness. However, the court itself has become mad. All right, so Lear is mentally mad himself, but yet the court is also mad. So the idea of that is, if you have a mad leader, you're going to have the court is going to suffer because of that, okay? So the logic and reason that should guide Lear and his rule, it has been disrupted, all right? And this logic and reason, it's been replaced by turmoil and chaos, all right? So again, you have a damaged king. You have a king that has suffered and gone through certain things. So it's going to have an impact on his court, okay? The king is meant to be this moral leader, this kind of moral guide that everyone looks up to. All right. So when something goes wrong, if something goes disrupted for the king, it's going to have an impact on the state. So the state itself has become mad. All right. So that's the point I'm making here. Equally, the physical space itself appears to be reacting to the madness of the king. All right. We see that, for example, with the storm scene. Okay. The physical environment, crack winds, the lightning attacking in the storm scene, the wind and rain crashing against the castle outside. So it's just the physical environment is also disrupted, okay? So there's like a sickness lies over. So there's a physical sickness over the space that King Lear is experiencing, okay? So the second point then, the violation of the moral order. So I said there a couple of minutes ago, we spoke about the violation of the moral order. Again, Lear is king. Lear is the person who leads his kingdom into kind of what is expected. How do people, the ideals that people need to kind of strive to. Okay. Okay, so again, I'm getting reports that you're not seeing the 2 seconds there. I'm very sorry about this, guys. Okay, so slideshow. 2 seconds, guys. So we're going to just... Okay, again, our internet is a bit slow today, it seems, so just give me 2 seconds. It will be worth the wait, I promise. Okay, so I think I've fixed the slideshow issues there. Hopefully I have. So yeah, we're talking about Lear being that kind of moral leader. But Lear being that moral leader that has ironically done very immoral things, okay? Or that leader that isn't... Okay, yeah, he is that moral leader that kind of falls off his perch. So a royal court, such as the one that Lear reigns over, is supposed to be a place of great honour and integrity. However, it is now a court based on that manipulation and that corruption. Okay, so the sickness or madness that has taken hold of the court, it manifests itself in that lack of morals. Okay, that misguided decisions, and of course, the murderous and villainous acts committed throughout the play. So what am I talking about in this slide? It's basically, if you have a bad king, and the king is meant to be this kind of know-it-all, perfect kind of ideals that everyone should strive to, if he's metaphorically and literally fallen off his throne, if his crown has become skewed, it's going to seep down. It's going to kind of nearly infect almost, okay? So the violation of the moral order. So you have a bad Lear, you're going to have bad subjects. You're going to have bad people in a kingdom that's ruled by a flawed or a bad king. Okay, so again, that violation of the moral order. Okay, false divinity. Okie dokie then. So it's a very fancy way of basically saying that Lear is human. Okay, Lear isn't this kind of perfect king. It's clear to begin with, at least, that Lear fully believes that his right to rule is divine. Alright, and this was a common thing in Shakespearean time. The divine right to rule, the divine right of the king. So it's a power given to him directly from God himself, okay? So royalty, monarchy, Lear being a king, he doesn't have to hold himself to the same kind of human experience that other people will, okay? Because he's not of this world, so he fully is believing himself to be this truly superhuman, divine presence, okay? We see that's obvious for our audiences when we look at, say, the love test, okay? Perfect example. He's drunk on his own power. He doesn't believe that he is this, he does believe that he is this perfect superhuman person, okay? So this means that in an ordered and calm society, that Lear is almost godlike in his authority and power. However, alright, so this is where one thing comes into the other, okay? So however, due to the chaotic and the damaged state that he inflicted on the court through his poor judgment, he is not at all divine, okay? So Lear, he is in fact flawed, and he is in fact human, okay? Because again, remember, the umbrella that we're looking at this under is that theme of madness, okay? So again, look at it from the angle of madness it's a human experience. Okay, Lear's downfall is that downfall that we speak about, that descent into madness that we speak about, it sheds light on that false divinity. Okay, it sheds light on that kind of the allure of kingship, or the illusion of kind of this perfection of kingship and moral order, etc. But it's not real. When you scratch beneath the surface, he's not just human, he's completely flawed. Okay, whereas think of his poor judgment, think of his lack of judgment, his blindness, etc. All of those things, all of those ingredients of Lear shed light on his madness and shed light on this false divinity. Again, that idea of divinity being the fake, the divine right to rule, okay, or the kind of the divine power of the king. It's not there though. It's a lie. Okay, it's just a ruse that is kind of set up or constructed by Lear and his own ego. When you take that away, he is in fact flawed and he is in fact human. Okay, his madness is a kind of a step into looking at that kind of false divinity. Okay? Alright then. So again, obviously when you're talking about madness, you do actually, of course, it's expected of you as well, as those nice kind of bits I've given you, you can, of course, and it is expected to still actually talk about Lear's madness itself. Alright, what it actually looks like, what it actually means, okay? So Lear's descent into torment and madness shocks readers and shows us just how vulnerable and weak he actually is. Alright, so again, what you should do here is think of the Lear we meet at the start, think of the Lear we meet at the middle, and think of the Lear we meet at the end. Okay, it's a progressively more vulnerable and more weak version. But again, in Lear showing that vulnerability, it shows that he's not this kind of godlike creature. He's actually just this, strip away all of the trappings of kingship, the kind of the robes, the crown, the throne, the kind of the entourage. What are you left with? You're left with a kind of very vulnerable old man. That's what Lear is. Okay, Lear is this elderly individual, this vulnerable individual, and he has been, again, the second bullet point here, something that you could specifically write directly into an essay. Okay, Lear has been the architect of his own downfall. All right, and through that madness and through his madness, we see that that decent society has been violated due to the selfish and arrogant aspects of human nature. So I'm saying a lot there in that bullet point. What am I actually saying though? Again, it goes back to if Lear isn't everything that he says he is, then if the cracks start to show in the monarchy, then the cracks will start to show in the court itself, and the court becomes split. Even the act of Lear, for example, splitting his kingdom at the start, okay, there's a rejection of that kind of duty, that sense of kind of lifelong duty of monarchy. Lear rejects that. Okay, at the start, again, think of the love test. So that in itself, that's the start of Lear's kind of madness. Okay, that's the start. Like he's going to split his kingdom in three. Well, it becomes two, but originally he thought he was going to split it in three. All right, and again, when you remove that, and when Lear starts to go on that kind of journey into madness, that descent into madness, the cracks begin to show, and the more ugly side. Okay, the more selfish, ugly, and arrogant aspects of human nature start to appear through the character's behaviors. All right, and that's what I mean when I talk about that idea of social commentary as well. Okay, what the themes are the vehicles. So the theme of madness and the angle that we're taking of Lear's madness, it is the vehicle to examine the society. It is the vehicle to look at what is Shakespeare's comments, what is Shakespeare's thoughts, what is Shakespeare's social commentary into it, okay? And again, those arrogant aspects of human nature. Lear's own arrogance, all right? So Lear's own arrogance, coupled with his deteriorating mental state, means that he lacks any insight or ability to reflect on his actions and behaviours. We know that from the beginning, okay? Lear is, for the most part, completely self-involved, self-obsessed. Everything is from his own sense of high ego and his own kind of high horse, okay? So he lacks that ability to kind of look inwards. He lacks that kind of self-reflection, that kind of emotional intelligence, okay? So there is clear evidence to demonstrate that Lear is damaged, and though driven by outrage and anger, he does lose his grip on reality and logic. Alright, so it's clear there is evidence, the storm scene being an example, probably the best example. There is evidence that Lear, even though he's angry, and even though that kind of madness is a very kind of raw emotion, again, betrayal, anger, distrust, frustration, all of those things that are kind of elements of madness, there is points in the play that audiences do probably think that Lear has lost his mind, or at least is on the process of losing his mind, because he does become delusional and delirious, and he does lose that grip on reality at times. Okay, he does very much, he is just kind of barking mad at certain points in the play. Okay, that reality and that logic, again, the mock trial, that where he pretends to kind of reign over Cordelia and Goneril, Regan and Goneril, for example. Okay, so he's not in his most kind of together mental state, to put it mildly. Okay, so there is genuine examples or genuine kind of moments where he does actually tip the scales and he does lose his grip on reality and logic. Okay, so again, blindness, under the theme of madness, still looking at it, because again, the blindness is, how am I connecting blindness, by the way, to the theme of madness? Because it is this fact, Lear is not literally blind, that's Gloucester. Lear is blind to logic, and the reason he's blind to logic, his mind is so hell-bent on not looking at things in how they are, but looking at things how he decides to look at them. Okay, so kind of not even rose-tinted glasses, but just the fact that he can't be told. Alright, so that blindness that we have under the theme of madness, so the angle of blindness, we can say that Lear is morally blind as king. Okay, so again, to be morally blind, to have morals, the idea of morality, again, go back to the violation of the moral order, but that idea of morality, it is the difference between right and wrong. It's that sense of conscience. It's that sense of those kind of deeper feelings of, I know what to be right, I know what to be wrong. So we can say that Lear is morally blind as king, and it is only through his anguish and trauma that he is able to gain real insight. So I spoke about that in the last live session as well, where we looked at kind of the tragic hero, the journey of the tragic hero. Okay, so a key example of this is the storm scene. Lear has reached his most harrowing and his most exhaustive state, and it is at that point, that very point, that he is able to at least begin to feel empathy, okay, and understanding for the wider suffering in the world. So Lear has to reach that point of complete destruction, okay, to finally be able to see. He has to nearly be overpowered and suffer the consequences of his own blindness and his own poor judgment. Only then is the irony there, only then is he able to actually see. Okay, so along with Lear's for a figurative or metaphorical blindness, Gloucester suffers a physical blindness. Okay, so Gloucester suffers a physical blindness, and is only then is he able to see the error of his judgments from putting his fate in the wrong people. Just like Lear does himself. Okay, so that's talking about the kind of the subplot which I spoke about in the last live session too. Alright. Then tragedy, because again, madness is a key theme in this play, but remember this is a tragic play as well. This is a Shakespearean tragedy. So, however, despite all of this, and despite Lear's attempts at trying to reclaim his throne, okay, so we remember at the end, when we talk about plot, he does have that kind of last ditch attempt to kind of try to save Cordelia, and like there are those attempts to restore him to the throne. The tragedy does lie in the fact, however, that he is too late. So although he has seen the error of his ways, and although he has seen his poor judgment, it does come too late for him. Okay, and again, it results in the death of his innocent daughter Cordelia. So the tragic intensity, and again, those words tragic intensity, I'm deliberately taking them from a past question. Okay, it's born out of madness and the consequences of such. Okay, so how am I connecting this to the theme of madness? Madness is the vehicle for this tragedy. Okay, it's the vehicle for social commentary as well, but it is this kind of, it's how the tragedy unfolds. Bring it back to Lear's madness, Lear's blindness, Lear's kind of bad decisions, the fact Lear isn't this superhuman king, the fact that he is this flawed, vulnerable, weak, kind of bitter old man. Okay, it's all born out of madness. It's all born out of that lack of judgment, that lack of foresight, that inability to reflect, that inability to kind of own his own mistakes until it's too late. All right, so the madness, it's born out of the madness is the consequences, and that leads to the tragic intensity, that leads to the tragedy of the play. All right, so I hope that was okay. Hopefully the next two, again, apologies again for the slow internet, so we're praying that the next two will go smoothly. So the second theme that I'm going to look at is the umbrella theme. So again, think back to the thematic study and kind of being like an umbrella. The umbrella that we're going to look at it under is appearance versus reality. Okay, and again, each slide that I go through will have specific elements and specific kind of things that you can talk about in an essay. So this false veneer of goodness. All right, so again, that idea of a veneer, it's just like it's a layer, it's a false layer put over something. Okay, that's all it means. So Shakespeare presents the theme of appearance versus reality in a number of diverse ways in the play. The overarching sentiment connected to this theme is the idea of two opposing forces in conflict with one another. So, two opposing forces in conflict with one another. How you may have looked at that in class with your own teacher, because again, I'm assuming everyone has done some sort of thematic study. So how can you kind of blend what I'm giving you with what your own teacher has taught you? It's this idea of good versus evil. Okay, so the appearance versus reality, the kind of the left versus the right, up versus down, and good versus evil. Okay, appearance versus reality. It's a significant number of the characters have different versions of themselves at different points in the play. So again, you have that public, you have the private self, you have the good and the evil veneer. Okay, so again, appearance versus reality. What do I mean in a thematic study? What you see is not what you get. All right, and how does that go back to? How does that give us a richer or a deeper insight into the society? How does the theme help us understand in a deeper and more considered way the fact that what you see is not what you get with these characters? Okay, so the way in which the characters of Gonal and Regan, for example, are represented to audiences is an excellent example of individuals having both a public and a private self. Okay, so the two sisters are duplicitous. Okay, Gonal and Regan are duplicitous characters. The two sisters deliberately portray themselves publicly as the doting daughters of the king, at the start at least. Okay, quickly the mask begins to slip, but for the start they deliberately are deceitful. They know full well what they're doing. They know how to play up to their father's kind of own insecurities and his own sense of ego. Okay, but yet, as I say, the mask begins to slip. So yet their true selves are in fact violent and power-hungry individuals. And this is in stark contrast to their public persona. The private self is evil and conniving. Okay, so again, the public versus the private, the appearance versus the reality, the good versus the true evil. So that kind of false goodness. Okay, manufactured and stuck over their true kind of evil selves, their true kind of manipulative evil selves. Okay. Other characters too are at odds between their public and private self. So Cornwall is supposed to be a gentleman of noble social standing and expected to be a loyal subject of the king. Yet he is like his wife and his sister-in-law. Okay, he is in fact a vicious and evil and treacherous individual plotting to overthrow Lear and take ownership over the kingdom. All right. So again, the characters have this sense of not being who they say they are. We don't know where we stand with these characters. So again, bring it back to that personal response. Who do you trust? How do you know when someone is how do you know when someone is what they say to be and what they truly are? Okay, so that false veneer of goodness. The three characters I've just mentioned there, just an example of that. Okay, so the flawed nature to kingship. So again, society is operating in the respectable, and respectable probably in inverted commas there, okay? In the respectable parameters of an English court. So again, it's Shakespearean time. It's meant to be very kind of prim, proper, stiff upper lip, everything respectable and kind of decent. So behaviours and actions, though appearing to be governed by honour and decency, have in fact a shocking and more sinister underbelly. So again, the umbrella theme, the appearance versus the reality. The reality of this play, it's not a world you would like to live in. Okay, it's shocking, it's violent, it's a society governed by manipulation and power and lies and deceit. Okay, so audiences can also examine the idea of Lear having that duality to him. Okay, so in ways he is at odds with the different versions of himself. So although a king should be a perfected ideal for others to strive towards, Lear is in fact selfish and dishonourable. So again, it's similar to the flawed nature of kingship, okay, or that kind of false divinity that I spoke about a couple of slides ago. So that's in conflict with the expected nobility of kingship. Alright, so the public version of Lear should be this perfect, decent, honourable, noble king. But in fact, he is this deeply egotistical, deeply insecure, flawed individual. Okay, and also the fact that Lear isn't particularly likable. Alright, and this is a good one for the appearance versus reality. It's a good one for the kind of guiding the personal response, that personal engagement as well. How much do you like or dislike Lear? Okay, what behaviours does Lear kind of do? What does he do to kind of make you dislike him so much? Alright, because he's definitely not. We do have sympathy for him. We definitely do have sympathy for Lear. And we definitely do kind of warm up to him. But at the start, we definitely don't like him. Do you know what I mean? At the start, he definitely is this kind of, like, you're rolling your eyes and you're like, what is this guy's problem? Okay? So that he isn't what he appears to be either. Okay, so all of these, the characters in this play, there's different versions of them. Okay, and so again, that duplicity, duplicitous characters that are present, okay, that we can examine via the theme of appearance versus reality. So, specifically talking about now, this disguise and duplicity, because the idea of disguise is also addressed in the play. Audiences can see this in the relationship between Edgar and his brother Edmund. While Edmund presents himself as a caring son, his true self is actually damaged and bitter. He's hell-bent. He's completely hell-bent on taking revenge against his father and his brother Gloucester. Okay? Gloucester being the father and Edgar being his brother. So, it's significant, or at least noteworthy, that this idea of disguise does crop up a couple of times for the audience. Alright? So, Edgar must disguise himself as poor Tom in order to protect himself from persecution. So this is a subversion of the theme. Edgar must conceal his true good and honourable self. Alright? Equally then, the disguise and concealment is also presented when Kent hides his true identity in the form of an old peasant, but again to continue his loyalty and his devotion to Lear rather than the usual treacherous intentions. So let's just take a breath here and unpack this idea of duplicity and this idea of disguise a little bit more then, okay? So in the idea of Edmund, it is that kind of veneer, that kind of Edmund, again, just like the two sisters, just like Cornwall, he is this, to begin with anyway, he is this duplicitous character. Okay, he's trying to be or pretending to be the perfect son. Unfortunately, Gloucester falls hook, line and sinker for it. Okay, that's Gloucester's own poor judgment. But then you have the physical, literal fact that Edgar and Kent both have to actually disguise themselves. Okay, again, Kent being the poor peasant and Edgar being the character of poor Tom that accompanies Lear into the wilderness. Alright, so it's significant in that, again, the struggle of good versus evil here. As the evil grows in the court, those characters that are good have to conceal their intentions. Do you know what I mean? So again, it's that flipped moral order. It's that kind of piece in the Shakespearean plot where evil does seem to be gaining the upper hand. Okay, where evil does seem to be kind of reigning over goodness. All right, when those characters such as Cornwall, Goneril, Regan, Edmund, when those characters are kind of riding on that wave of power, all right, when they're not afraid, when they're fully able to embrace their true evil and deceitful self. Okay, so when they take that and they run with it, the subversion of that theme then is the fact that those that are good have to slink away, that those that are good are banished from the court. Okay, so Cordelia is gone, Gloucester gets blinded, Albany is shut up, poor Tom is disguised, Kent is disguised. Okay, so it's that disguising for survival, but it's also that flip, that tip in the scales as evil starts to reign over good. Okay, so again, the appearance versus reality. Okay, so I hope that's alright. Alright then, horror and perspective. So, audiences cannot underestimate just how uncontrollable the evil. So that this is kind of directly leading on from the last slide I talked about. Audiences cannot underestimate just how uncontrollable the evil has become in the court, and the violence and the manipulation that has taken hold of it. Alright, so Cordelia can be used as a means at which to examine this evil via her poor treatment. So again, I'm under no illusions. You've probably done the theme of good versus evil to death in King Lear. So what I'm doing now is, because again, it's just showing you how can you actually talk about this. How can you talk about the evil in the court and sound a bit differently, or how can you kind of control it? Because again, students always wonder, I know what I want to say, I just can't say it. So this is hopefully giving you a way to help you say it, okay? So Cordelia facilitates audiences having that negative impression of Lear, in particular. So showcasing that selfish, angry old man who disowns his own daughter. So this disownment of Cordelia runs deeper than a family feud, okay? It is a rejection of divinity in place of self-importance, okay? So the treatment of Cordelia just shows you how horrific, okay, and just how damaged and how flawed this has actually become. So the appearance of this kind of goodly, saintly, respectable court is in stark contrast to the reality, where you have this, again, this disownment of Cordelia. It's deeper than just him being angry at his daughter. It is, in fact, it's a rejection of divinity. It's a rejection of kind of the ideals of kingship in place of, again, Lear's ego and Lear's own self-importance. So he's damaged and he's imperfect. Cordelia, then, she also highlights again, and deliberately I've used the wording of a past question from the exam papers, the tragic intensity of play. She is the root of many of Lear's bad decisions that lead to his own downfall. It is too late for him to change. Instead, he is destroyed by his own guilt for the way he has treated his daughter. So ultimately, it is Cordelia that audiences can view as the victim of the play. Through no fault of her own, her young, decent and caring nature is out of place in a ruthless world, resulting in her death. Okay, so the theme, the reality here being that someone as pure and kind as Cordelia literally is dead at the end of the play. It is living in this society, living in this play of good versus evil. It is the death of her. Alright, so that's what I mean by that, so I hope that makes sense. Okay, so let's take a little breather there and see what questions we have on Instagram. For the comparative, so that's a good question. So for the comparative study, what's the best way to answer the question without going off topic? So I will, at the end of this session, I'll specifically talk about, because I'm aware some people may do King Lear. Today's session is looking at King Lear as a single text, but I know some people may be doing this as a comparative with two other texts. So I will speak about kind of that at the end. Okay, you'll be happy to know it's good news if you're doing this as a comparative. Okay, good news. But anyway, so betrayal and justice. So we're still in this idea of different versions, appearance versus reality, one force against another, good versus evil, kind of whatever way you want to say it. So the betrayal and justice. So the theme of betrayal forms a fundamental part in the play. Alright, that's pretty obvious. There's nothing kind of groundbreaking that I'm saying there, but Lear is so certain that his daughters will remain entirely and completely and utterly loyal and devoted to him purely because they are his daughters, and he is their father. The true reality is not just vastly different, but also devastating for Lear. Okay, so Lear's betrayal, it is that idea of, I speak about it in a couple of minutes, I think, filial ingratitude. Okay, it's a very fancy way, again, it's on the slides in a couple of minutes, but Lear is betrayed by his own flesh and blood, and it's too much for Lear to cope with, because he was so self-assured and so secure in his own sense of power that he was just thinking that, again, the love test being a perfect example, he falls hook, line and sinker for it. Okay, so equally one can argue that Lear himself betrays not only Cordelia by rejecting his patriarchal duty, but also betrays his kingdom and kingly duty. So he's unwilling to look past his own selfish ego. So betrayal, this is what I mean by it. This is what I mean by kind of standing out a little bit. If you're talking about betrayal, of course you're going to have to talk about the fact that Goneril and Regan do the dirt on their father. Okay, the fact that they hoodwink him into thinking they're going to be this, that, or the other, and then just are really like nasty to him, and the anger that brings out in him. So of course you're going to talk about that. Okay, Lear putting his faith in the wrong people, blind to logic, poor judgment, all the stuff that you're familiar with. But again, talk about it a bit deeper. So think right now, if you've ever gotten feedback on an essay, you need to develop your point. You need to expand this point. You need to talk more about this. You need to be clearer about this. You need to develop this in a different way, whatever way your teacher may have given you feedback. So how can you look at betrayal a little bit different? So equally one can argue that Lear himself betrays not only Cordelia by rejecting his patriarchal duty, but he also betrays his kingdom. And that, again, that kingly duty, because again, monarchy, it's meant to be this, it's built on this kind of idea of service and duty and honour. Okay, so he's unwilling to look past his own ego. He doesn't care about his daughter. He does at the end, but for the most part at the start, he's so drunk in his own power that any sense of who is he loyal to, where are his convictions? So Lear is again part of that betrayal. When we look at betrayal, Lear is very much in that mix as well. Don't just lay it all at the feet of the two daughters. Okay? So this struggle is, however, met with justice. Again, this idea of struggle, appearance versus reality, two opposing forces, good versus evil, whatever you want to say. With betrayal, the antidote to that is this idea of justice. Okay, so this struggle is, however, met with justice, and it's a common thing. The past exam papers look at it. I think the idea of the redemptive power of love and justice, etc. So this struggle, it's met with justice. Students can argue here, is it simply the justice being enacted by the likes of Albany, Kent and Edgar, or is it something deeper? So are Albany, Kent, Edgar, the goodies, are they agents of justice? Do you know what I mean? And again, when I say that, it's just a fancy way of kind of saying it. They push back. Okay? So eventually there is that, I spoke about the scales tipping in favour of evil. It does tip back the other way. Okay? They do reject it. Albany, Kent and Edgar do say enough is enough. Okay? They are willing, they do be willing to kind of enact justice, to take revenge, to take justice out for the treatment of Lear. And again, Edgar and Albany particularly do it for Gloucester as well. The fact that Gloucester is being blinded. So is it that Albany, Kent, Edgar, are they agents of justice? Are they simply counteracting evil with goodness? Or is it actually something deeper? Do you know what I mean? So Gloucester in particular, have a look at the character of Gloucester for this bit, guys, okay? Gloucester notes the kind of suffering and the role of suffering. Lear does too, definitely, especially in a storm scene. But I like to look at Gloucester for this because when I say something deeper, It is that idea of, and again, it goes back to Shakespeare's social commentary. Are the characters, are they the builders of their own destiny? Okay, now that sounds very deep and powerful. But are they the ones in control, or is it something beyond them? Is there a higher power at work here? Again, I don't want to say God, but for want of a better thing, is it this kind of moral strength or moral guide or moral kind of power looking down upon them? Do you know what I mean? Is their fate kind of set out before them? Are they kind of that idea, play the hand they're being dealt? Alright, so that idea of justice then, so justice and karma, divine justice, the restorative power of that justice. Okay, the chance at rebirth, the chance to everything is being destroyed because of the behaviours and because of the egos and the passions and the manipulations, because of the poor behaviours of humans. It's completely stripped back, and the chance at rebirth, the tragedy. Yes, everyone is dead, but there's that chance at rebirth, so that justice. So is it something deeper? Okay, is there a higher power at work beyond the simple behaviours of characters here? Okay. So again, if you have any questions, guys, please do keep them coming into the Instagram page. I would be delighted to answer them. Alright then, so the final theme that I'm going to look at today then is this theme of gender and family. Alright, so gender and family, theme 3. So, dysfunctional family, and this is where I'll start to kind of, if you're saying, let's say for example, you want to answer on the comparative study, and you're answering, say, a cultural context, okay, family and family units and kind of its societal kind of expectations around what a family is. It's a perfect one for if you're doing this as a part of a comparative cultural context essay. But equally, again, like I said, we're looking at gender and family as a single text. So I'm starting with this idea of love, and the fact that love is a key thematic element in this play. Alright? Because again, look, I'm doing a lot of talking, but let's strip it back. Okay, what is this play in its essence? It's a play about families. Okay? It's a play about a dysfunctional family. Like, so let's say King Lear was written today. Okay, and this is a good thing for you thinking about kind of your personal response, your kind of engagement with the text. What is it that made you engage with this text? What is it that struck you in this text, etc.? So just as a little segue, imagine King Lear is a Netflix show or Amazon Prime, whatever kind of streaming service you're looking at. Imagine, wow, a new 6-part series called King Lear. What's it about? Elderly, rich, powerful father, 3 daughters. Okay? Elderly, rich, powerful father, 3 daughters. He's getting old. Let's say he has the early onset of dementia, for example. And he decides he's a big company. He's the CEO of a big company. And he decides to split the company 3 ways. One of his daughters doesn't like what he's hearing, so he kind of just disowns her. And he gives it to the other 2. And then the other 2 start manipulating him and setting in place a series of events to kind of make him go mad and take all the power for themselves. Alright? That's a dysfunctional family. Equally, Gloucester and the 2 sons. Okay? One of the sons treated perfectly, gonna get all the inheritance, treated perfectly. The other one, simply because he's a product of an extramarital affair and he's a bastard, gets nothing, treated like dirt. Okay? So all of those characters in the mix there, that is very much a dysfunctional family. Okay? So love is a key thematic element in the play. And when I say love, I'm going to be examining it on this slide and the next slide. When I say love, I'm talking about it in a couple of different ways. When you think love, don't just think, oh, sweetness and light and everything's perfect. Okay, it's not. It's actually quite the opposite here. So it shows that love and have both an honest and a dishonest quality to it. Okay, so an honest or dishonest quality to it. Another way of saying that, it has a constructive and a destructive quality to it. So while Cordelia clearly, alright, so clearly and obviously and truly deeply loves her father, it is not enough for Lear. He instead must abuse this. Okay, so he instead must abuse this and seek a more superficial, ego-boosting form of love. Okay, so while Cordelia, she genuinely does love him, and she basically says to him, doesn't she, in the first scene in the love test scene, I've said I loved you because you're my father and I'm your daughter and I do love you, let that be enough. And his response, nothing will come of nothing. He kind of nearly spits it at her in anger. Okay, so love leads to that dysfunction. Love is the thing, is the kind of the motivation behind his own delusion. Okay, he has become so accustomed to people fawning over him. So again, it has that unhealthy kind of destructive quality to it. So he's looking for that superficial, ego-boosting form of love. That's what the love test is. Okay, tell me you love me. Okay, I don't this rubbish of saying you love me and that should be enough. It's not enough. I want you to show me you love me. Tell me you love me. Let me hear you love me. But that's not real. It's quite the opposite of what love should be, or what Cordelia is looking as love. Okay, so it's superficial. It's ego boosting. It's artificial. It's there's no substance to it. So this is willingly given to him by his two other daughters. So Goneril and Regan willingly give it, though having no sincere feelings toward their father. They are happily able to trick and manipulate him into believing they love him the most. Okay, so again, this dysfunctional family, they use love. Love is used as a weapon. They weaponize love. They manipulate, they warp, they twist it for their own advantage, which is obviously not what love should be used for. Okay, love is this element of caring and compassion and romance and safety and all of those things. They take that and they spin it around and use it. So they weaponize love. So again, it gives you just an idea into just how utterly and deeply dysfunctional this family actually is and the behaviors of this family. Okay? So, destructive love. So that the power and the role of destructive love. And I think this goes very nicely in with the past question. I can't remember the exact year, but there is a question that looks at the redemptive and destructive powers of love in the past papers on King Lear. Okay, so the destructive love, or lack thereof of love, okay? So across the play, there are healthy and unhealthy representations of love, and they have both negative and positive consequences. So obviously there, guys, the unhealthy love, negative, the healthy love, positive. So unhealthy and destructive love does nothing but to further drive the kingdom into chaos and further isolate Lear, removing him from power and causing him to go mad. Okay, so it causes him to go mad. So alongside this warped and uncaring love, Lear is also outraged that his daughters have betrayed him and turned their backs on him, caring about their own selfish gains rather than their own father. Alright, so Goneril and Regan, their love for power and their love of self and their lust for power is so much greater than the love or the lack of love that they have for their own father, for their own flesh and blood. Okay, so it's warped and it's uncaring. It's a cold love. There's nothing there, really. The opposite. Alright, so Lear believes that based purely on the fact that he is their father. Alright, so this, I spoke about this a couple of minutes ago, guys, but it's here for you as well, okay? So Lear does believe that based purely on the fact that he is their father and that they are his daughters, that they should remain loyal and loving toward him forever. When Goneril and Regan do not do this, it is called filial ingratitude. So the fact that Lear has done so much for them, the fact that he's placed so much trust, so much belief, and so much kind of himself into these and trusted them so much, the fact that it's thrown in his face, they are ungrateful. They are ungrateful for everything he has done for them. filial ingratitude, and that filial ingratitude leads to, again, the theme is gender and family, but it leads to his madness again. All right. So redemption then. So then this is a key, kind of goes in with betrayal, justice, redemption. So going alongside this destructive love, however, there is some form of redemption. Cordelia, despite everything, continues. All right, she does very much. She continues to love her father, and she does remain loyal to him, even attempting to have him returned to the throne. So Cordelia doesn't lose herself as a character. Okay, Cordelia finds herself remaining utterly loyal. Again, I know when we think of loyalty, we think of Kent. He's kind of the king of loyalty. But Cordelia does. She doesn't reject her daughterly duty. She doesn't. The love she has for her father, despite everything, somehow doesn't wane. Okay? She blames the manipulation. She blames her father's behaviour on her two sisters. But she still loves her father. So she doesn't actually hold anything against him. There's nothing to forgive. Okay? So, Gloucester too, though suffering damaging forms of love in his unequal treatment of his sons, Edgar and Edmund, does have some redemption toward the end. Kent too, ever the loyal and faithful servant, remains utterly loyal and caring towards his master, King Lear. So, love, and the love that these people have, and I'm talking about the goodies here now. So I'm talking about Cordelia, I'm talking about Albany, I'm talking about Gloucester, I'm talking about Kent, I'm talking about Edgar, I'm talking about the Fool. Okay? These guys remain loyal to Lear, and it is that love that they have for him that acts as this agent of redemption. It is that love does, now not like, I know they all kind of kick the bucket at the end, bar Albany and Edgar, but love does sustain them. Love does see them through. Love is that kind of guiding redemptive force that allows the court to rebuild, that allows the court to breathe again, to have a chance at getting things right, at starting over. Okay, so there is that redemptive power, that redemptive force that love also has and is present in the play. Okay, but however, it is important to note that despite having some redemptive qualities, the way love has been used and manipulated in the play has meant the complete destruction of the court, overpowering any chance of the character's survival, and instead ending in tragedy and death. So as part of that redemption, it's redemption with a small r. Why? Because if you put it up aside how much has actually gone wrong for these people, and how there's nothing left of the court. The royal household, the king is dead and the king's 3 daughters are dead. It's the end of Lear's line. So it's redemption, yes, but it is redemption with a small r in comparison to the utter chaos and the utter destruction that this kind of manipulative, false, artificial love has had. Okay? I don't have it on the slide there, but just another interesting point that I've just considered there as well is the only other kind of we definitely have versions of love. Cordelia loves her father, loves Lear. Edgar loves Gloucester, definitely. But the kind of the more powerful associations we have with love is not actually love, it's lust. It's sexual desire, for example. So look at the character of Edmund. Alright, Edmund and his relationship with the 2 sisters. Goneril and Regan are both after and both want to be with Edmund. Alright, so they're taking that kind of quick fix, that kind of instant gratification, those kind of shallow sensations over the love that they should have for their own father. Alright, so it's kind of like it's nearly the Diet Coke version of everything. Okay, instead of having the real, sincere, genuine, compassionate, deep love that they should, or at least are expected to have at this time, they're talking here about instead sexual desire, manipulation, their own power trips, the elation of having power, etc., flexing their muscles. All right, so it's just that kind of the warped kind of sense that it has. Okay, so again, I'm conscious of the time, guys, so I won't take up too much more of your time. Don't worry. So I'm going to go through this slide, then go and look at Instagram and see if we got any questions that I'll be happy to answer, and then there's a couple of bit more kind of little bits and bobs of points of information at the end. Okay, so you cannot look, and I would say this for every text, and I'm sure your fantastic English teachers would also agree with me. You have to look at gender, and you have to look at the treatment of women in Shakespeare. Okay, and again, you could write a whole PhD thesis on this. This is just some pointers to give you in relation to how to deal with the theme of gender, how to look at that idea of women in the play. So, Goneril and Regan, they are two of the most deeply unpleasant female characters that Shakespeare has created. Okay, so maybe Lady Macbeth is in the running as well, but Goneril and Regan are definitely, they're up there really with kind of his most unpleasant female characters. Okay, so they behave in a way that unquestionably subverts feminine stereotypes. So this is now, I'm not going to say it's going to change the world, but the way I'm treating gender is hopefully that little bit different. It gives it that little bit of flavour that will just make it hopefully stand out in if you were to write in a single text essay. Okay, so ideally, if you have a piece of paper in front of you right now, guys, I'd scribble that down. Okay, so the treatment of women in the play subverts feminine stereotypes. The theme of gender is it's subverted in some ways. Okay, so to subvert it just means to change and look at it from the opposite. Okay, so they behave, so Goneril and Regan, they behave in a way that unquestionably subverts feminine stereotypes. What do I mean by that? So again, a lady of the royal court in Shakespearean times, what do they look like? What do they behave like? So they wear dresses down to their ankles, up to their neck. They wear corsets. Their hair is braided very nicely. They listen to chamber music. They sew. They do embroidery. They tend to their father's needs. They're very respectable. They ride horses. They paint watercolors. All right, so there's very kind of, this is what women should be. And again, this is a lovely point. This will also apply if you're doing the comparative study with Lear as a comparative text. All right, not what we get though. So all those things I said that we expect from a woman of the time, not at all in any way, shape or form what we get with Goneril and Regan. So instead, we have two women here, and again, I'm stressing that word women in particular. We have two women that commit acts of aggression, acts of violence, acts of sexual desire, and acts of murder. So these are aggressive, violent, manipulative women. All right, not what we expect from them. Okay, and again, think of the personal engagement, think of the personal response that you can have with these characters. They are different. They are unexpected in how they are portrayed. All right, like if it's a man, like Cornwall is this big, aggressive, kind of manipulative villain, but like we probably don't bat an eyelid because, again, stereotypes of the time. Women should behave one way, men should behave as another way. Whereas these two are behaving in a way that is more manly. All right, they're not these kind of delicate, gentle, fair ladies. Okay, even the fact like murder. All right, like in this time it was like women weren't capable of such things. What do you mean a female murderer? Certainly not. Okay, equally then, sexual desire. We're used to a man lusting after a woman, but the woman lusting after the man. Again, it's unbecoming of these kind of ladylike figures, Goneril and Regan. So the fact that they are sexually attracted, to the fact that they do sexually desire the character of Edmund. All right, it's just it's not what we're used to. It's that's again Shakespeare further subverting the feminine stereotypes. So it is true to say that the two daughters are the chief architects of the evil acts and the treachery inflicted upon the court. So they are very, very much kind of the ones pulling the strings. Okay? They are women in a man's world, and I'm going to talk about that in a couple of minutes, but they are the ones that kind of take the power that Lear gives them. Okay? They are the ones to hoodwink Lear into thinking that they're the best things to slice bread, and then completely just running off on him. Okay? But, so that's probably what you're used to talking about. However, if one is to take a more critical view of the gender theme, and when I say doing this, guys, what I mean is don't just talk about the fact that women are treated like this and the fact they're doing that. Ask yourself why. Bring a bit of colour, bring a bit of depth into your response. And this is how you can do it, the third bullet point here. So, however, if one is to take a more critical view of the gender theme, it is necessary to consider Goneril and Regan in the context in which they are actually living. Alright? So although they are committing such shocking and such evil, terrible, treacherous acts, they are also two women living in a world that does not naturally value female power and authority. Alright? So this is what I mean. A two-dimensional kind of standard expected H5, H4, kind of maybe a good H3 if you do it right, is Goneril and Regan are the villains of the play, and that is unexpected because they are female and they act the way females shouldn't act and behave, blah 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 blah. Yeah, that is absolutely true, and of course you have to say that, but enrich the point. Why do they behave like this? Alright, because again, go back to my very first slide, the key question when we look at themes: what is being communicated to me here? What is being shown to me here? What's coming through here continually? Alright, so they are living in a world that does not naturally value female power and authority. One only has to look at the way in which their younger sister Cordelia was cast aside. So it is kind of that Darwin-esque kind of Darwinian survival of the fittest. Okay, eat or be eaten, kill or be killed. Alright, so again, it's our own kind of preconceptions, it's our own kind of stereotypes that we fed into. So yes, they are evil, yes, they are behaving in a certain way, but look at what they're living in. They are their father's daughters. Their father isn't exactly a saint. You know what I mean? Now, he's not as bad as them, but they are women, and they know full well, they're clued in enough to know that if they want to do this and if they want to pull this off, they have to be ruthless. As an act of preservation, they desperately want power. Okay, so I'm not calling these, they're not good guys, they're not good, they're evil, but they are clued in enough to know that the fact that they are women, they have to go hell for leather, they have to be ruthless here. It's about survival. Look at Cordelia. Okay, look at Cordelia. She is in many ways the kind of the feminine, the dutiful daughter, the obedient daughter. She's chewed up and spat out. So you have to develop a hard, tough skin to survive in this court. Alright? It's just unfortunate that these two in particular are just nasty, vicious pieces of work to begin with. But again, to ask yourself why. And I don't mean to let them off the hook. Okay? I don't mean to redeem them. I don't mean to say that they're actually good or anything. I'm not saying anything like that. They are ruthless and evil. But it's just to give a bit of a depth and a bit of a colour to your response and to your consideration of these characters. What is it about them that makes them the way they are? Look at their father. Look at the environment. Look at the court that they've grown up in. Okay, so it's all about survival. Okay, it is very much all about survival. Alright, if you want to survive in a world that operates like this, you have to be ruthless. You have to be one step ahead. You have to be, if you, again, eat or be eaten, kill or be killed. Survival of the fittest. So to this end, Goneril and Regan are presenting a strong and powerful force to be reckoned with. Okay, so it is a force to be reckoned with. Not only out of want and desire, but equally out of necessity and the need to survive. Another way of putting that to you guys, okay? Like, what can they do? Do you know what I mean? Once they start down this path of being evil and being manipulative, like once they have decided, okay, we're going to manipulate our father, once we take that, once they have the power, what are they going to do? Give it up and get executed, or give it up and be imprisoned? So they have to hold, like, the only way through this now is to see it through to its conclusion. Alright? They've ripped the plaster off now. So they have to see it through to its conclusion. Alright? And ultimately it results in the death of both of them because they turn against each other. But, again, it's that necessity. We've started, so we must finish. Okay? And just to talk about gender then, just to finish up on gender, Albany is another interesting, it's not the be all and end all, but it's just a nice little tidbit to finish on for gender. Albany is an interesting example of, again, the subversion of the male stereotype. Okay? So, Goneril and Regan subvert the feminine stereotype because they're violent, aggressive, murderous, manipulative, power-hungry, have sexual desires, etc. All of those things. But then you have Albany, who is this very gentle, kind, noble, reflective individual. Alright? And it's not what's considered particularly the thing to be in this time. For example, Cornwall. When you think of macho man, when you think of a male power, you think of Cornwall because he is this powerful, aggressive kind of force. Alright? Even the fact that Albany, because Albany is this kind of more gentle, more reserved, quiet, decent person, that's mocked. Okay, think of the fight that he has. I think it's in Act 3. No, sorry, Act 4, I think, actually. Pardon me. When him and Goneril have a fight, she mocks his lack of masculinity. She mocks his manhood. The fact that he's not this big, powerful, macho individual. Okay, it's what makes her want Edmund more. Okay, so it's that subversion as well. Albany has that moral strength. Albany has that inner strength. He's not physically strong or powerful or kind of macho. He's quieter, he's more reflective, he's more thoughtful and considered. Okay? So, let's see, have we got any questions? So, I will answer, there's more on Instagram that I will get to, but just one here that I think would be useful for people. So, how should you structure a single text essay? Would PQE be too basic for high marks? So, how would you, that's from Neve. PQE, is it too basic? Yes and no, I would say to that. So PQE is probably something you all did for junior cycle, the point, quote, explain, or or PE is another one, point, evidence, explain. SEE, state, example, evidence, whatever. There's loads of different versions. But is PQE too basic to get the high mark? Yes and no. So, one, yes, it's good to have PQE because it gives your single text that kind of structure. It gives your single text that kind of shape that it needs. But in being able to do PQE in itself, it's not really enough because, again, this is an extended piece of work. So instead of saying PQE, I would say use topic sentences, use thesis sentences. Okay, and this is something you have to develop in your own kind of planning, your own kind of rough mental planning before you write the essay. So you have the guiding question, again, your P mark, but ask yourself, what is being asked of me in this question? What discussion points, what points of information, what considerations can I make to apply to this question, to respond to this question, to demonstrate and give evidence to the examiner that I will answer this question in a way that's appropriate. Alright, so have a thesis sentence, have a topic sentence to begin with. Develop then your point. Develop your point and then have your concluding sentence at the end. So it is PQE, but it's a much more sophisticated, it's like a high definition version of PQE. So kind of, I would start getting out of that PQE kind of like point, quote, explain, point, quote, explain, point, quote, explain, because it will give you an answer, of course it will, but it will have that kind of stuntedness to it, because your answer needs to have that certain engaged kind of flow and that kind of readability to it. All right, so think more along the lines of topic sentences, thesis sentences, a developed point, a coherent thought process, and then the evidence of reference and quotation and exploration and explanations of key scenes or quotes to back it up, and then the concluding sentence. Do that in each paragraph. Okay, if you go to the, I should say here, guys, look. So 2 seconds. I'll show you our website. So yeah, if you go here, look, this shows you ExamRevision.ie, and let's say I go to English and I'm looking at King Lear. You have lots and lots of resource packs here. Okay, so the single text King Lear. I actually go through how to look at, okay, so again, how to look at the resource pack, how to write a single text essay. Okay, what are the steps, near the instructions, the detailed instructions for how to write a single text essay. But yeah, a very kind of basic answer to that question. Avoid PQE and instead start saying topic sentences, concluding sentences, thesis statements, guiding kind of principles for the essay rather than PQE. Okay, okie dokie then, guys. So first of all, thank you very much for joining today's masterclass. But I'd also just like to say there's the 20% discount, Lear21. It's valid until just before midnight tonight. It'll get you 20% off. So if you haven't joined us yet, please do join us. We've lots more resources, full study packs for English, lots of different things going on. So that's the first bit of information. The last thing that I want to talk about today is the fact that we have got masterclasses coming up in a lot of different subjects. So I'll give you that information now. So Leaving Cert Business is next Saturday on the 27th. So there's a live free YouTube masterclass on that. 6th of March we have Leaving Cert Match, focusing on differentiation and integration. Saturday the 13th we have another Leaving Cert Maths, going to look at trigonometry. And then Leaving Cert Chemistry is going to be on the 20th of March. Okay, so basically, if you haven't remembered anything I said there, if you have a look at our social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, etc., it has all the information related to our different masterclasses. I'll be back shortly enough with another, hopefully smoother, Leaving Cert English masterclass. And also, if you keep an eye on your email accounts and our social media accounts, you'll see that we're going to be doing study seminars, study sessions, workshops over the Easter midterm in different subjects. So kind of crash courses looking at the different bits and bobs needed to do well in Leaving Cert across different subjects. Okay, so again, thank you so much for today, and I hope that was helpful, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.